Minutes later, the police, led by Inspector Daniel Clay, arrived at the scene.
Who found them?
The man and girl.
Medical examiner been around yet?
Just left.
Okay, Inspector. What are you going to do?
Look around a little.
Pretty dark out there. Once you get beyond the range of those lights, you won't be able to see your hand in front of your face.
I will get one of the flashlights from the patrol car.
Okay, be careful, Clay.
I'm a big boy now, Johnny.
Tor liked me to do his makeup. He was just like a big Cupid doll. He was like a big child.
I love Tor Johnson and Vampira's expressions, especially Tor Johnson's. They're pretty priceless. I can't imagine what he was told and how to, what they're telling him to do. What am I supposed to do? Do that.
Bring the giant here that I may get a better look at him.
The eyes were lenses. And in other pictures, I did do other things with his eyes, but not this one. This picture had the lenses. Now I have taken the skin of an egg, a fresh egg, and break it and use the skin to put over their own sclera, that lining of the eye. The scars were created on Tor's face with cotton, spirit gum, and collodion. And I make sure that it wouldn't be a permanent scar or would be detrimental to his skin. You have to be careful because sometimes collodion will burn, especially if it's used over the same area more than once. So I was certainly to move it over just a little each time so it wouldn't be over the same spot.
And was Tor pretty patient with that process of the makeup?
No, Tor is always like a child, you know, getting his hair cut. He anticipates it, but he's not happy. He wanted to let his hair grow, and I said, if you let your hair grow, your career will go down the sewer. I said, that baldness, I want my hair. I says, no, Tor, don't let your hair grow. Keep it shaved. I'd run the blade over it, the barber's blade, you know, the clipper over it, just make sure that none of it was stubbing out. He's a nice person. I kind of miss him.
It's likely a lot of people miss actor Tor Johnson. Born Tor Johansson in 1903 in Sweden, Tor passed away in 1971. He appeared in at least 25 films, always typecast as heavies in the most literal sense. Tor even squared off in a wrestling match against actor Dan Blocker in an episode of TV's Bonanza. But his fame rests on 6 fright films made between 1955 and 1961, 3 of them with Ed Wood. Tor's fame was further solidified courtesy of a rubber mask, first issued by the Don Post Mask Company in 1965. The mask made Tor's face familiar to millions of people who would otherwise have no idea who he is. Don Post Studios still thrives in North Hollywood. Don Post Sr. virtually invented the latex mask as we know it in the late 1940s. He also worked, uncredited, on classic science fiction films, including Invasion of the Body Snatchers, for which he sculpted the pods and other makeup effects.
I'd like to go back and say that probably the first fan that I ever met, and I think in order to bring some of these other elements in, like to bring Tor in, probably the first fan of science fiction that I ever became really aware of was Vern Langdon.
I was involved with wrestling, I was involved with radio, I was involved with college, I was involved with makeup. I was a lover of the theatrical and Don Post masks and that type of thing. So that's how I first met Don, and when I came in and looked at the business, I thought, you know, what they really need is a little direction here. And so I bought half of the business from Don and came in 1964, and as compared to 1864, and started making things that I wanted. Things that I wanted to have, a rubber skull and a Dracula mask, and set up a license with Universal.
was a life cast taken of the mask, but after that, it was sculpted using the life cast as a reference, and it was sculpted by Pat Newman. I think she really captured something of Tor. She captured his scariness, she captured his gentleness, and she captured that bigger-than-life feeling.
I thought it'd be a great mask. I wondered at the success of it, but again, I wanted one. I thought it should be done. It would have meant some royalties in Tor's pocket, so I set it up and we did it that way. And it was a good seller. One of the best sellers, in fact.
Tor is by far Plan 9 from Outer Space's most beloved and familiar mascot. This is due partly to the actor's threatening physical appearance, but perhaps it's also because audiences sensed that beneath the exteriors of the mute, hulking monsters Tor played, there was a kind and gentle soul.
Tor was like he was like a sugar bun inside.
I had put on a little convention, I think it was called California Con, something like that, and invited all of the fans from a couple hundred miles around who were readers of famous monsters to come, and the star of the occasion was Tor Johnson. He, you know, when you took off the mask of the monster like Karloff, there was Santa Claus behind it.
I knew Tor from wrestling, and he was a great wrestler, the Super Swedish Angel. He was one of the most dangerous men in the sport because of his size, and he really packed a mean punch. And not too many guys came out of a match on top of Tor.
I remember him putting his arm around me, and I'm about maybe 5'11", 5'11 and a half. And Tor would put his arm around me, and my head would rest nestled in his armpit. The guy was huge. His arms seemed to be like this big.
He used to tell me little tricks of the trade there, and his favorite was, before he'd have a match with somebody, you know, commensurate with his power, would be, you know, he had that bald head, so he would take razor blades in between his fingers and he would just scratch his head about an hour before the match, and of course he'd draw blood. He'd try to just get a little bit below the skin layer so blood would come out, then he would blot it with a handkerchief in cold water or whatever, and by the time he'd get in the ring it would look perfectly normal. But then when the other wrestler would knock him to the ground, sooner or later a wrestler was going to get his head hit on you know, something, the ropes or the canvas, and when that would happen, it would open up again and blood would be all over the place.
He was a tremendous eater. He was just always eating up a storm. He always had trouble finding clothes that would fit. Most everything had to be custom made. He would get stuck in cars. You know, he'd get stuck in chairs in his own home. The things that I remember about him were his fun attitude and his enormous size and the warmth and love that you felt when you were with him. He'd put his arm around you and you'd just disappear. It was like, you know, like Andre the Giant. If you shake hands with Andre, your hand's gone. You know, he was here a minute ago. And if Tor put his arm around you, there was nothing of you left. I locked up with him a few times, and I'll tell you, he had a headlock that would kill.
In the late 50s, Tor was an unlikely contestant on Groucho Marx's quiz show, You Bet Your Life.
Meet Groucho Marx.
Welcome to You Bet Your Life. Hey, this is... Who are you, crew chef?
Tor Johnson.
You're Tor Johnson? Why? Did he get angry at him?
No, that's a Swedish name. Tor Johnson is a Swedish name.
Oh, Tor Johnson, you mean, huh?
Yes.
I can't say Johnson.
In the course of preparing this documentary, it was learned that horror director Sam Raimi and Evil Dead 2 co-writer Scott Spiegel often recreate Tor's landmark appearance on Groucho's show for Friends. Fearlessly, both men agreed to perform their incredible simulation for the Plan 9 Companions cameras.
Who are you, crew chef?
Tor Johnson.
You're Tor Johnson? Well, why? Did you get angry at him?
Nope, it's a Swedish name. Tor Johnson is a Swedish name.
Oh, Tor Johnson. See, I can't say, Johnson. Just for the record, Tor, what are your measurements? Not that I'm particularly interested, but you may be a missing boxcar that the Union Pacific Railroad is looking for.
My hips are 60, my stomach waistline is 54, my chest is 62, and my biceps are 22.
Say, we have the same measurements. Yeah, him and my automobile. Say, Tor, I don't understand. With those measurements, you should be twice as attractive as Jane Mansfield. But for some reason, you're not. Not to me, anyway. So, you say you're Japanese, Tor?
No, I'm Swedish.
Mm-hmm. And what part of Japan are you from?
Stockholm.
Stockholm is in Japan?
Stockholm is in Sweden,
Oh, really?
not in Japan.
Uh-huh. I always thought Stockholm, I always thought I knew my lines.
We have no cutaways, Sam.
You
What are we
said
gonna
you could
do?
cut this thing.
No,
You
well-
promised me. I'll be in my trailer.
As I said, Drew Friedman, I think, had a large part to do with making Tor into a kind of a cultural icon with his Any Persons Living or Dead book.
I used to refer to myself as an illustrator when I was younger. Now I just like cartoonist because it's like, it's like the lowest kind of artist you can be is a cartoonist. So I kind of like that. I wanted to disturb people, I guess, and hopefully it's going to, this stuff is going to be funny. I deal with real people and celebrities. And I want people to be confused into thinking that it's actually a recorded moment, that this has actually happened, that Tor Johnson used to roam the streets of New York, and these are photographs of it, of when it actually happened. If there's a thread that runs through everything, I guess it's the fact that it's all done in dots. I guess that sort of sums it up. Hopefully it's disturbing, it's dark and disturbing, and it's going to upset people. Although I'm not as interested in upsetting people as I used to be. The Tor Johnson work was never meant to make fun of him. It was always meant to pay tribute to his life, and show that he was a working actor in Hollywood in the 50s, and but he also had a life at home where he'd eat Swedish meatballs and the like. And it wasn't all glamour. I really enjoy drawing his face, and he has as he got a little older, he got deep lines in his brow, and he's got the heavy eyebrows and the pug nose, and and the pointy bald head. It's just fun to draw.
Vampira shot up like a skyrocket. She was extremely popular. She was, of course, the predecessor of Elvira, and she had this incredible waist. You could really just about put your two hands around it, and understand that she created that by fasting for 3 days before she appeared as her ghost hostess.
My name is Stephanie Locke, and I'm a dominatrix. That means I speak softly, carry a big whip, and wear leather for a living. I became a dominatrix at 19, and one of my men idolizes Vampira and always told me about her. And so I would wear black evening gowns and very dark lipstick, and he would pay homage to Vampira through me. She has had all the dominant symbols: dark hair, pale skin, dark lips, long fingernails, tightly cinched waist, the black clothing.
Mila Nurmi, otherwise known as Vampira, is another of Plan 9's casting cornerstones. And apparently we owe it all to Bela Lugosi himself.
He was sitting there with Bela, and they were watching Vampira introduce White Zombie, and Bela said, I'd like to work with her someday.
Vampira's TV show, which broadcast B horror movies, aired on Saturday nights at 11 on Channel 7 in Los Angeles. As her program opened, the original Mistress of the Dark would approach the camera out of a misty Gothic void, let out her trademark shrill scream, and seductively introduce herself to the night owl audience.
We have had in folklore, since the beginning of man, God knows, I guess, this anima of an evil, cool lady who is in control. She's usually a succubus. You know, she comes to men in their dreams and so on. But she's all-powerful, incredibly beautiful. Well, that impressed me tremendously as I grew up in the Depression, because we lived, everybody, the whole world was gray, demoralized, impoverished, and along came this glorious figure who was imperious and in control. Nothing bothered her. She was the dragon lady in Terry and the Pirates. It was a comic strip. And then my second introduction came through Disney's Snow White. There was the evil queen. Again, the same anima. And then Charles Addams did a box cartoon in the New Yorker, and this lady appeared again, and this time she looked like Gloria Swanson. And this time I was ready to do my own version of this anima. So I had to go to a public masquerade ball dressed as the Charles Addams lady. I bound my bosoms and went barefooted, and I wore the dank hair. And no Hollywood glamour makeup, no nails, nothing. I did the pristine Charles Addams version, and did indeed get discovered by Hunt Stromberg Jr., who was at Channel 7. But they wouldn't do the Addams family. They said they couldn't afford the whole family. They were just going to steal this one character. And I said, I'm not a thief. I'm not doing it. But give me a few days. And then I thought, sex and death. That's good. So I got trashy. We had a magazine called Bizarre in those days. And from that I got fishnet hose and black patent leather shoes with studs and long phallic nails and a long phallic cigarette holder. I did a lot of Dragon Lady. But B&D, right? Tight waist cincher and uplift bra and glamour makeup. So that's what happened, and they allowed it. Hunt, I came and showed Hunt. He said, that's fine, and we went with that. And Vampire was born. I was paid $79 a week, $59.60 take home, midnight Saturday night. It was a very dead time slot. Well, within 3 weeks, Life magazine was there knocking, saying, hey, we want to do you. So the studio took notice. What have we got here, right? And, you know, all hell broke loose. I had fan clubs all over the world, which I don't think has ever even happened since then with a local show.
In Plan 9, Vampira is supposed to be playing Bela Lugosi's deceased wife, brought back from the dead by the invading aliens. Why Bela's wife should look like, well, Vampira, right down to the revealing black dress, is anybody's guess. But Plan 9 fans wouldn't have it any other way.
I made myself up at home, which was my custom, and then, since they couldn't afford a chauffeur for me, or as big major studios did, I went on the RTD. It was the cemetery set they had there. A sociologist or historian, no matter how gifted, probably couldn't discern scientifically why Ed Wood's film White Plan 9 from Outer Space has reached this cult status. I think it may be scientifically impossible to find a cut and dried reason. But the nearest thing to a reason, it seems to me, is that Ed Wood was one of the chosen. It was karmic. It was his destiny. Simply that, unreasonable as it may sound, it was his destiny to live this episode, right? And we, wittingly or unwittingly, are his disciples. Criswell was such a fascinating man to me. I'd like to see someone do a biography of him.
And of course, Criswell is incredible. Kelton the Cop is...
Oh, Criswell's.
His full name was Charles Jaron Criswell King, and he opens and closes Plan 9 from Outer Space with a series of uniquely delivered pronouncements about the unknown and the unbelievable, whose meanings are unknown and unbelievable.
My friend, can your heart stand the shocking facts about grave robbers from outer space?
The son of an Indiana mortician, Criswell was a canny entrepreneur who got his start as a radio newscaster in New York. He reportedly began to predict the future when asked by the station's management to pad his broadcast. Through the 50s and 60s, Criswell had his own Los Angeles TV show and a syndicated newspaper column. Both were called Criswell Predicts.
Everybody listened to Criswell, and whether you made fun of it or not, he had a following that wouldn't stop.
I don't know where in the world he got his reputation, because I don't recall a single prediction ever coming true.
Criswell claimed that 87% of his predictions were accurate, but in fact he was seldom correct. Still, no one seemed to mind much, and Criswell was often invited to guest on national talk shows.
Oh, yes. A famous psychic, but he did not believe he was psychic. I think he was, though he didn't think so himself. He thought he was a fraud. When my mother died, we were impoverished, and I didn't know how to go about doing a funeral. It was something I'd never done. And Criswell came to the fore. He said, I come from an undertaking family. And he took charge of the funeral. He got all the pallbearers, did the handshaking, he did everything.
Criswell crossed over to the land beyond in 1982. Showman to the End. His marker sports the name of his show and newspaper column. Lest the world forget.
Did you believe his predictions were sincere?
Well, I was hoping when he did predict about the grave robbers from outer space, I was hoping that would be true, which that's about the only one I knew that turned out to be finally turned out to be the right one.
What was his prediction?
That you'll be hearing about this picture in the near future.
When Ed Wood finished editing Plan 9 from Outer Space, he handed it over to producer Ed Reynolds. The finished film had gone over poorly at test screenings, but Ed Wood remained ever optimistic. While he went on to other projects, Ed Reynolds began looking for a distributor. No easy task.
The release of the film was handled by Ed Reynolds. He went to New York a few weeks later in an effort to get a distribution. He started at the very top of the production releasing companies like Paramount all the way down. He was there about 3 weeks, get no one to handle the film. And he was staying at some hotel in New York, and his funds ran out. And they took his luggage, his suitcases, the hotel bill did until he could pay his bill. And he just ran into hard times, and his wife finally was able to send him some money from Los Angeles so he could pay his bill and get home. As I understand, some months later he was able to work out a distribution with a small company. He had to provide the release prints. And a lab, I think, made 10 or 15 release prints. But they took his lien against the film as a mortgage, as a guarantee. So he had to provide the film and the press kits and the warrant sheets before a company would even release it. Unfortunately, film just was not booked in too many theaters. Some small, cheap country drive-ins and a few downtown backstreet theaters. It just made no money at all. And after a while, the distributor just pulled it.
By the early 60s, Ed Wood's career was in serious decline due to the critical and commercial failure of Plan 9 and the handful of films that followed. The 70s only got worse for Wood. As they had for Bela Lugosi before him, the times passed him by.
Well, they weren't making any more B pictures. The television came in the early 60s.
Sadly, Wood's last years were marked by poor health, despondence, evictions, and heavy drinking.
He took this place on Yucca in Hollywood. He gave me the address, and I went over. And so anyway, I thought I'd go and see Ed. And when I went over there, it was just a rundown area. You know, it's derelicts around that area. You know, winos and dope addicts. And this place was it was just worse than Main Street. So anyway, and it really hurt me, you know. I said, geez, Ed, how'd he get here? You know, I couldn't believe it. So I went and visited Ed. And I think I went down there about 3-4 times to visit him. But he was always drunk. Always, you know, he was just drunk. He was out of it. He was talking about doing a movie. I said, I got a guy's interested in financing me. But I said, it's one of Ed's wild stories. But I hope for the best for the man. But really hit rock bottom. Ed had no place to go. They threw him out of that place where he was. That rent was maybe about $30 a month. He couldn't even make $30 a month. So Ed had to leave that place. And anyway, Peter Coe took him in. and he stayed with Peter Coe for about 2 or 3 weeks. And this is where Ed died in his home. And I understand that that Sunday morning, there was a football game on TV, and so anyway, I understand Ed wanted a shot of liquor. He needed a shot of liquor, but anyway, Peter was getting after him. He was kind of, Ed was improving. He was kind of tapering off his drinking, and Peter was making some good food. But I remember Ed said, I need a drink, and I think Peter did give him a drink. But then about an hour later or so, someone come to visit Peter Coe, and they wanted to see Ed Wood, and he said, well, he's in the bedroom. So when the person went there in the bedroom, then they walked out, came out of the bedroom, says, that man's dead already. So Ed Wood's gone.
Wood's ashes were scattered at sea by his wife, Kathy. There is no place to mark his passing in the world, and even the trade paper of his industry, Variety, failed to run an obituary. The end of Wood's life might well have been the end of interest in his films, but barely had Plan 9 completed its minimal 1959 theatrical release when its long, slow climb to rediscovery began. As early as 1961, it was appearing on television. When Plan 9 aired on Los Angeles TV, Ed Wood would call friends up at all hours of the night to excitedly remind them when it was running. Kids who read magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland took Plan 9 for their own. A cult began to spring up around the film and Wood.
It was a combination of many factors, I'd say. Some of the ones you just mentioned, the Medved's books and the insatiable appetite of television for old films in the early 60s and the late 60s, actually more than the early 60s. There was also a growing cult for Bela Lugosi, who's by far more popular now for some reason than even Karloff. I think it was also partly the style of the film itself started reflecting back on the audiences. I mean, they couldn't quite believe it, what they were seeing, and the idea that they couldn't believe it made it fun. Also, it became hip to find old movies comical.
By the late 1970s, it had indeed become hip to find old movies comical. The phrase, "so bad they're good," was resurrected, and a pair of film buff brothers named Michael and Harry Medved decided to tap into that sensibility with 2 books, The 50 Worst Films of All Time, and its much more influential follow-up, the Golden Turkey Awards.
There's always been this underground cult of Plan 9 fanatics. I think Joe Dante was the first one really to write about it and take it seriously. When he was like 14 or 15 years old or something, he wrote this list of the worst monster movies ever made for Famous Monsters, I guess. And I had seen that list, and so I was partially inspired by that.
At the 75th birthday party for Forrest Ackerman, Famous Monsters of Filmland editor, director Joe Dante recalled the article in question.
The big thing came to me, how can I get my movie with Famous Monsters? This was the quest of every kid my age. And as it happened, I wrote a big long letter about a lot of movies I hadn't seen, and I had previously sent out a list of all the best movies that I had ever seen, so I sent out a list of all the worst movies that I'd ever seen. And for some reason, not only did he decide to print it, an article in the magazine. And I remember going to the postal box and pulling out this big envelope. That was certainly one of the red letter days of all time. And then, of course, I read the article, which thank God completely written. Many words that I didn't even understand. And of course, the article has come to haunt me because in my earlier days, I thought that